The Bearcats coaching staff went out recruiting on Friday. Let's take a look at what the current roster looks like, including a position of strength. Once again, we'll also look at a position in need of replenishing, and I'll tell you why the Bearcats win on the hardwood Saturday is the most important win of the season so far.
Our Locked On Bearcats, your daily podcast on the Cincinnati Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is the start of the new week. Thanks for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day, free and available everywhere that you get your podcast and on YouTube. Subscribe to our Locked On Bearcats YouTube channel and follow it to get an alert every time we drop a new episode. Today's episode of Locked On Bearcats is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions to apply. Alex Frank with you, your host each and every day here on Locked On Bearcats. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the defensive line for the Cincinnati Bearcats is once again a position of strength, and there's a big three returning for the Bearcats. Jowon Briggs last year had 61 tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks. Dontay Corleone, who really was a breakout player on last year's team and is really starting to become one of the most likable players on this team. 45 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 fumbles forced, and 2 fumbles recovered. And then Malik Vann, 3 tackles, a tackle for loss, and that was because he was injured in week 2. So there are 3 really good players on the defensive line. I think this is, without question right now, the Bearcats' best position. I think this is a defensive line that, once again, is going to be really good. I think they're going to have tremendous success against the run. I think they could be really good against the pass, too. So I'm excited going into this season, knowing that the Bearcats have their defensive line as a strength once again. And think about it over the years, how good the defensive line has been. Going back to 2018 with Cortez Broughton, Marquise Copeland, Kamani Fitz, and Michael Pitts, and how good that defensive line was. And then 3 of them left, and they just, it was next man up. It was Curtis Brooks. It was Elijah Ponder. It was Ethan Tuckey. It was a combination of so many players. And then you bring in Myjai Sanders, and then you just keep churning out guys on that defensive line. And then this year, Jabari Taylor was one of those guys. One of those guys as part of that revolving door of just great defensive linemen. And that still is true this year. It's going to be this year. So if you're anxious about the season, if you're uncertain about how the Bearcats are going to look in their first season under Scott Satterfield and new defensive coordinator Brian Brown, I'm going to be honest. I'm looking forward to seeing this defense. I think it's going to be really good, especially because up front, where this program, what prided itself on for the last 6 years, is still really, really good. So we look at what this defensive line has. Walter Stewart, he's been retained as the position coach. So in an offseason of change, this group once again remains unquestionably this team's biggest strength. And just imagine for a minute, this defensive line obviously struggled in their final 2 games of the season against Tulane and against Louisville in the bowl game. But just imagine for how that last game of the regular season against Tulane would have been if Malik Vann had not been injured. Because of the big 3, only 1 played in that game. And that maybe was a factor in Tulane being able to run the football seemingly at will against the Bearcats. How different would that game have been if Malik Vann had been in there? That veteran presence, Malik Vann's a guy who really hasn't had that incredible season statistically, but he's gotten better throughout his career, and it's been an uneven career. He didn't play much in 2018. He played a lot in 2019. COVID season shortened things in 2020, so he didn't really have that great of a season. But in 2021, he had 33 tackles, which is a career high, and he also had 3.5 sacks. So I wonder if Malik Vann, given the time, if he can be really good this year, if he can make that leap like Briggs made last year, if he can make that leap like Dontay Corleone made last year. Just imagine if Malik Vann had played in that final regular season game, or I mean, maybe not just that. The UCF game, the Bearcats gave up over 250 rushing yards, if I'm remembering correctly, against UCF. Regardless, it was a lot of rushing yards. It was over 200. But Malik, man, my goodness. That presence, I think, would have been so critical in a game against UCF on the road and against Tulane at home in that final regular season home game. He's coming back with something to prove, and I think that's huge for this defensive line. That experience, it's going to give this defensive line an edge. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can bring to this defensive line. And retaining Walter Stewart, it's not just for recruiting purposes, and he played for Cincinnati, but this is this team's biggest strength, and you don't even have to change position coaches. This position, to me, still looks like the same it did under Luke Fickell. Walter Stewart's still here. Vann, Briggs, and Corleone are still here too. So, and this has been a position of strength for years. And if Briggs and Corleone, with their breakout years last year, Corleone is becoming one of this team's most likable players. Briggs is that good veteran presence to have on this position in this team. And Vann, like I've said, he's progressed steadily throughout his career. Now we go beyond the big three. Who else is there? Well, Daniel Greshik, who just committed as a transfer from Utah State, Justin Wadley, Ryan Mullaney, Dominique Perry, Eric Phillips. I look at the defensive linemen on this roster, and I think there's reason for excitement. There's reason for optimism. I really do think that there is sorry, I'm playing fetch with my dog as I'm recording this, but there's a real chance this defensive line can still be really good. And I'm really excited to see how it all plays out, because this has been what has defined this team's defense for the last 5 years. And I know what you're thinking, well, Sauce Gardner and Kobe Bryant. And yeah, Sauce Gardner, by the way, congratulations to him, first-team All-Pro in his first season in the NFL with the New York Jets. And Kobe Bryant and the Seattle Seahawks in the playoffs this past weekend. It was great to see him and the Seahawks in action in the NFL playoffs. Great to see all Bearcats in action across the NFL playoffs, and all the Bearcats named first-team All-Pro. No other school in the country with more first-team All-Pros than the Bearcats this year. So major credit to my mom's clapping in the background. So just but the defensive line has been what's defined this program for the last 5 years. Tough and nasty, and I think that's only going to continue this year, even with the new head coach and new defensive coordinator. All right, coming up, whereas the defensive line is returning a big three, the wide receiver room is losing a big 8. So how does this group replenish? We dig into how after I tell you how this episode of Locked On Bearcats is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your goals. I use LinkedIn Jobs when I was at Bearcast Media all of the time. We posted who we were looking for, what we were looking for, and it was great. LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs with targeting tools. They go beyond resume data by using insights from your job post, company, and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates. Identify the most qualified candidates on LinkedIn Jobs and connect with them fast and for free. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your job qualifications, all on one platform. We got big goals in 2023. The right team member can help us achieve just that. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors, because they help you find that right team member. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So just post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks again for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day. Make sure you check out our brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball. Everything you need to know about college basketball all in one place, plus hear from big-name experts, insiders, coaches, and players. Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Great weekend of college basketball. Kentucky upsetting Tennessee. Kansas State taking Iowa State taking Kansas to the wire. Man. In the wise words of John Rothstein, this is only January, and we'll get to the Bearcats in segment 3. But the wide receiver room Let's be honest. It's a position that I think a lot of us are, a little uncertain about. What's it going to look like? Who's going to be there? And yeah, it's as bare as you think it is. And I'll tell you why in just a few minutes. But if you need a refresher, JoJo Bermudez, Nick Marner, Will Pauling, Jaden Thompson, LaChristian Bluesmith, and Quincy Burrows, all of them are in the transfer portal. And to add to that, Tyler Scott and Trey Tucker have moved on. Essentially, the whole receiving core from last year is gone. And it's very nerve-wracking because this has been a position that quietly from 2020 through 2022 became really good. Alec Pierce emerged as a star. Tyler Scott had a breakout season last year. Trey Tucker was that speed demon. I was actually just on Locked On Auburn with Zach Blackerby last week talking about Nick Marner, and I just wish we could have seen more from him because remember at this time last year he transferred to Cincinnati. I was excited about what he could bring. I think you were too. So just really, really wish we could have seen more from him. But now it's like, well, who is the new quarterback, whether that's Ben Bryant? Who is the new quarterback or Ben Bryant going to throw to? Well, here's who has transferred so far. All right. And by the way, Justin Williams has done a tremendous job keeping track of transfers for us in The Athletic. And that's how I've started to, really know who's gone, who's committed. So it's a really, really, he lays it out nicely, succinctly, really gives you the everything you need to know about the transfer portal because it can be a lot to track. This really is the first offseason after a season that I've covered here on Locked On Bearcats. So here's who's transferred so far into Cincinnati. Keyshawn Helton from Florida State, D. Wiggins from Louisville, Sterling Burkhalter from North Carolina A&T, and then just over the weekend, if you happen to miss it, Donovan Ollie from Washington State. This last player I'm really excited about. Last year with the Cougars, he had 43 catches, 491 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So I think he can plug in right away and start on this team and give this team a jolt at wide receiver. So you've got 3 Power 5 transfers that I just mentioned. That's key because you're going to a Power 5. No longer can you just pull somebody from a group of 5. I think if you got to start to, dip into your Power 5 resources. Now, here's where I am concerned, and I share your concerns. Wyatt Fisher is the only current receiver on this roster right now who had a catch last year. That's right. He had 2 catches last year, including the touchdown in the Wasabi Fenway Bowl. So that's not good. So a heavy emphasis on the transfer portal and guys like Ty Perkins and Barry Jackson to come in and contribute is what's going to drive this receiving core next year. And this position can be good if they get the quarterback right, which is going to be so important. That's another thing too. For as much as we know Ben Bryant when at his best is an accurate quarterback, I still think he's not the guy to start. Whether it's Emory Jones or Brady Drogosh or maybe Evan Prater, I think whoever's starting at quarterback, they have to start working with these receivers because it's a completely new look receiving core. It really is. Yes, Tyler Scott and Trey Tucker probably were not coming back regardless. But everybody else entered the transfer portal. And it sucks. It does. Because this was a position that had a lot of potential. Thompson, got better last year. Nick Marner had his moments early in the season last year. I was excited for what Will Pauling could do. Missed a good chunk of the season with a shoulder injury. So it is unfortunate that this position now is in a state of rebuild. But at the end of the day, I do think that the transfers who have come in, they're going to get some playing time. I think Barry Jackson and Ty Perkins could get some playing time because I look at the roster right now of wide receivers, and I see guys like Chris Scott and Ashton Collar and Drew Donnelly, but we don't know what any of those guys can do. None of those guys saw action last year. If you look at the stats from last year, they don't show up on the stat sheet. That is a problem to me. I don't remember their snap counts if they played at all, but what I am telling you is there is just a lot of uncertainty. You don't know who is going to be on the field week 1 when the Bearcats take the field against Eastern Kentucky. And yes, it's just Eastern Kentucky, but still, it might be a struggle. Maybe not like Austin Peay in 2017, but still a struggle because you don't know who's going to play a very important position in the Big 12. This position can be good if those guys pan out, but there's little experience, and that is the concern that I share with you. All right, coming up, why Saturday was the most important win for the Bearcats men's basketball team so far this season. I'll do that after I tell you how this episode of Locked On Bearcats is brought to you by Bet Online. We've got one more playoff game tonight in the NFL. It's the Cowboys and the Buccaneers in Tampa Bay, Monday Night Football. Right now on BetOnline, Dallas is a 2.5-point favorite. The over-under is at 45.5. I'm going to take Tampa Bay to not only cover, but I'm going to take them to win outright, and I'm going to take the over on that game. I think it's playoff Tom Brady. I think he's not going to mess around. Anyways, BetOnline.net, the point is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and the World Cup. We've got it all at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Cincinnati winning 54-52. My dog says hi in the background. On Saturday, the Bearcats and SMU. This is the most important win of the season so far. And you want to know why that is? Because it was a throwback win for the Bearcats, right? Ugly, poor shooting, but man, Wes Miller, he talked about earlier in the week, he wanted to see his team win a big game like this, when the Bearcats don't shoot the ball well. And 33.8%, 7 of 24 from 3 of 7 on free throw shooting. That is, that's not good. And by the way, they only attempted 7 free throws. That's another problem. So the Bearcats, how did they win? Well, Victor Lockton with 8 blocks, second most all-time in a game for the Bearcats. He had 6 points, 8 blocks, 10 rebounds. Landers Nolly the second, 16 points, 12 rebounds. Odio Guama with 10 rebounds. Jeremiah Davenport with 9 rebounds and 3 assists. They out-rebounded SMU 52-41. They overcame 17 turnovers. Micah Adams-Woods was stellar from the field, the only real stellar shooter. 16 points, 6 of 9 from the field, 4 of 7 from three-point range. You're going to have to win some games ugly. If this team is going to make the NCAA tournament, when the shots don't fall, you're going to have to find a way to win. Good news for the Bearcats is they did. And that is what I think is going to help this team in the long run. We know on a weekday night against ECU and Tulane, the shots are going to fall and they're going to put up 80 points and they're going to win and everybody goes home happy. But what's going to happen on a Saturday afternoon at 4 o'clock when the shots aren't falling and you got to find a way to win the game? The Bearcats didn't start out well in this game, but thankfully their defense did. And I remember 2019. The Bearcats played a late season game at SMU, 9 o'clock. I can't stand 9 o'clock tip times, by the way. The Bearcats won at SMU 52-49. It was like watching a football game. It's like watching the Bengals and the Cowboys. Well, the Bearcats won that game. And I remember Mick Cronin said after that game how proud he was of his guys. That was an ugly, ugly game. I think the Bearcats shot 30%, maybe less than that, and still managed to win the game. Well, that's what this team just did. And it reminds me of that 2019 team because that team was great. They went 25-6. They won the tournament championship. I was there to see it in Memphis. We called the games for Bearcast Media. They went on to go to the NCAA tournament. When the shots aren't falling and they start slow, this team needed to develop resiliency, and they did. Now they know they can win games. The great teams of the past won. That 55-53 win at Temple in 2018. That 49-38 win in 2018 at UCF. These games are how the Bearcats win. When the shots don't fall, we now know they can win those games. And good thing, because you got Memphis coming in. They'll bring in a really good defense, really good offense. Kendrick Davis, we know him from his SMU days, and DeAndre Williams. And this team will see Houston, Tulane, and Memphis again. Good thing that they did it against a poor SMU team, that they now know they can win the games that maybe they don't play well and they don't shoot well. And now we know they can win those games. All right, on tomorrow's show, what the Bearcats defensive line that we talked about as a position of strength will have to do to prosper in the Big 12. We'll take a look at Bearcats All-Pros more tomorrow. And a question that Mo Egger asked last winter that I'm going to apply to the Bearcats. On Wednesday, I look at the Bearcats Big 12 schedule next year. The schedule's out Tuesday, so also on tomorrow's show, I'll try to predict what I think the Bearcats schedule will look like. Russ Heltman's with me on Thursday. That's the podcast form of our live group Wednesday at 12:30. I'll also recap the Bearcats game at USF on Wednesday for Thursday. Friday, we'll look ahead to a massive showdown with Memphis on Sunday. Plenty more to get to this week. Thanks as always for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day, free and available everywhere you get your podcasts. For your second listen today, check out our brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball. Experts Isaac Shade and Andy Patton bring you everything you need to know on and off the court, plus hear from big-name experts, coaches, and players throughout the basketball landscape. Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. For Locked On Bearcats, I'm Alex Frank. Have a great rest of your day. Happy MLK Day. We all appreciate the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So just spend some time to think about that today. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the football game tonight. We've got NBA today. We've got, of course, college basketball, NHL, so much more. And we'll be back tomorrow right here on Locked On Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Alex Frank for Locked On Bearcats. Have a great rest of your day.